This is The Last Laugh. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast, and today I am thrilled to be joined by a stand-up comedian who has been making me laugh for a very long time. His latest special, Black Coffee and Ice Water, premieres exclusively on Audible this Thursday, November 20th. Patton Oswalt, welcome back to The Last Laugh.
Thanks for having me back. I'm glad we can get over the disaster that my first appearance was. I think I've issued every apology that I can. And
people probably don't remember how disastrous it was, but yeah.
Let's not go into that. And I'm really sorry for what it did to the 2020 election. Again, very sorry for all that. Let's just have fun today. Let's move on and have fun.
Good idea. This is actually your third time on the show, so you join our coveted three-timers club. So that's very exciting for you.
Nice to be a three-timer. I'll take it. Thanks, man.
I really enjoyed listening to your new special, which is not something that I'm used to doing. I feel like I'm mostly watching specials these days, but this is an audio-only special. So what was the decision-making going into that? Were you just sick of people looking at you, or how'd you get there?
I remember I got the offer from Audible, and it really struck me that except for my first two albums, I had always been doing like video and, filming and thinking about the set, thinking about the wardrobe and the lighting, and all the albums that really, really influenced me were just people being recorded talking, and you listen to the voice and your mind makes the pictures rather than you're being given an image. And I just loved the idea of getting to go old school again. And then I loved it even more when I was 10 minutes into recording the set at the Minetta Lane Theater. It took me 10 minutes to realize, I'm not on camera right now. This is just me talking and the audience responding, and it's very real and it's very immediate. And it was so immediately freeing. I felt fantastic.
How did it change your performance? I mean, because you're still performing for the people who are there, who are watching you, but not thinking, knowing that you're not on camera, how did it actually change what you did?
I think it made the performance even more alive and electric, because I'm performing for the people that are right in front of me. And what the audio is capturing is that excitement of just being in front of an audience live and not knowing what's going to happen next. And I am so much more energized in this special than I am in a lot of my recorded specials. And that was a big eye-opener for me. That was like, oh, wait a minute, I think I need to go forward differently on this. So that felt really good.
Well, you open the special with this bit where you declare your newfound allegiance to the MAGA movement in order to protect you from the Trump administration as you're traveling internationally. And exactly, it's a very funny bit. But was that based on a real fear or something that you felt traveling, in and out of the country over the past 9 months or whatever it's been? 10 months.
It's a mutated version of those fears. I had been traveling through the UK earlier in the year, and that is when some comedians were being, or influencers or bloggers or journalists or whomever were. I mean, I don't think that anything that I put out about the Trump administration is that far from the truth anyway. But I was like, they seem so petty right now, and they also seem so drunk on their new power that they're clearly misusing it. So as a joke, I mean, I'm embracing the ridiculousness of my own paranoia by reading this declaration as to the new turn in my act, that I'm like, please post this, get this out there so that they read it. Because, there's also, without me saying it, there's an unspoken, clearly they don't have the attention span or brain power to listen to a whole 45-minute set. So I can probably just get away with this absolute BS disclaimer about how I'm now MAGA for life, and then hopefully I can get to go along with my life.
Yeah, I mean, it is a real concern in a lot of ways. I mean, we had the comedian Jenna Friedman on this show not too long ago, and she talked about that she was actually kind of interrogated on her way back into the country from Canada about, oh, you're a comedian? Well, what do you joke about? What do you, and she felt a real fear in that moment, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, she unfortunately, that was such bad timing on her part. I know Jenna, she's very, very funny. And I think that, again, this is where my paranoia sprang from. That was their first taste of that kind of power, and they were so clearly overusing it and taking it for a test run and seeing what they could get away with. And she just got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Again, the bad thing about the Trump administration is there's nothing you can put. There's nothing beneath them. It's clear now that there is nothing beneath them. The only good news is it is an authoritarian. I don't want to say dictatorship, but it's definitely an authoritarian government that has no attention span. So the whatever horrible thing happens will usually happen for a week, and then they'll move on to whatever the next horrible thing is they want to do. And that's our only advantage, is hopefully we can out-create and out-pivot them, because they seem to have no object permanence, if that makes sense. So
you do the disclaimer at the top, and then you pretty quickly move on to, non-political material about your family, about your life. There's a lot of new material in this special about your daughter, who is now a teenager. I'm curious sort of the evolution of how you've thought about telling jokes about your daughter as she gets older. Is it something that you feel more comfortable doing now that she sort of has a say in it, or a way to kind of respond to you, as opposed to, when she was really young? Or how have you thought about that?
I mean, she definitely has a say in it as to what I can talk about and what I can't. I always run it by her. I don't want to be one of these people that just minds other people's lives. And I don't make it anything about her personally. It's more about my mindset colliding with her mindset, and her mindset a lot of times stands in for the next generation's, Gen Z, Gen Alpha's mindset coming up, which is justifiably very, very suspicious and very, very cynical about things, as they should be, because they have seen us, I think more than any other generation, those kids were really raised by kids and raised by people that didn't have that adult control over their emotions. And so it's interesting to see them. It's almost like they have had to become the adults in the room over us. And it's really interesting to see that. And that's what a lot of my bits are about with her.
Yeah. Do you feel like she gives you a special insight into that generation that might just be kind of invisible or inscrutable to people who don't have kids of that age?
Yes. And what the biggest insight that she's given me into that generation is they, way more than Gen X and way more than the boomers, are very, very aware of how the older generation is already trying to stamp them and characterize them without knowing anything about them. So there's a lot of I don't say that they're doing it cynically, but there's a lot of very quiet amusement with, oh yeah, we're online all the time and we can't now look at our phone. But like, we are clearly the older generations are the one that have been completely taken over by cable news and their phones. They were raised with these electronic devices. They can take them or leave them way easier than we can. And so it's interesting to see them very quietly, just sort of not necessarily laughing at us, but going, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, go ahead. It reminds me of like if you were a punk rocker in the 70s and 80s and you would watch your local news report about the new scare of punk rock, and you're just like, oh my God, these people are. So it is even worth getting angry about. That's what I'm getting a lot from her generation, is like, oh yeah, let the olds do what they're going to do. That's what they do,
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's an element of that generation is always the younger generation's always going to be rolling its eyes at their parents' generations. Now you just happen to be in the parents' generation.
Yeah, not even rolling their eyes, I think, in disgust or anger, but just like, oh yeah, that's what you do when you're older. But I think that her generation is far more aware that they will also go through that when they're older, and hopefully they won't be as judgmental to whatever follows Gen Alpha or whatever follows the thing that follows Gen Alpha. So, that gives me a lot of hope. They seem way more down to earth than especially our generation was.
You also mentioned in this special that you are now 30 years into being on Prozac. You talk about that. I'm curious, that there's a discussion that I feel like happens a lot in comedy and mental health that's changed a lot over over these past 30 years, where people were sort of afraid to go on drugs like that because they were worried it would affect their ability to be funny on stage. And did you have that worry 30 years ago? And how did you kind of overcome that?
I absolutely bought into that myth of, I've got to have my darkness and my angst to be creative. And as you get, and again, that's the thing about youth, you're very insecure with the gifts you have when you're young, and you're not sure yet. You haven't really learned yet where they come from. So of course you have that thing. But then as you get older, you realize that everyone that did create art from their angst either created it when they were on the other side of their angst and had calmed themselves down, or they were actively searching for ways to help their mental state. They weren't really writing about it because they didn't have the language that they had back then that we have now. There's a thing in that movie Barfly when the Charles Bukowski character, when Mickey Rourke goes, "No one who could ever write worth a damn could write in peace." And I feel like a whole generation of people were like, yeah, I gotta be a train wreck, man. And it shortened the longevity of a lot of people's careers because they decided to embrace destruction. And that again, that's another very hopeful thing for this next generation that I see, which is they are very open about, yeah, I'm taking time off mentally to fix myself right now. I don't need to, that whole thing, that whole generation that was all about, you grit your teeth and you muscle through it. You just got to grind. And they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. I'm going to take some time off so that it doesn't affect the kids that are coming up, at least the ones that I see coming up, people like Simone Biles and Chapel Rowan, they have the bigger project at hand rather than I got to conquer this week. They're like, no, I'm thinking in long terms right now. So, me taking this time off is not going to affect anything. And that's something that I keep trying to teach myself, but it's hard, man. It's hard to do that. You get very, oh God, I got to stay, out there, but you got to just go quietly work on your work and make your work and your health, mental and physical, good so that you can keep doing work.
Do you find it hard to say no to things that you...
Absolutely. I say yes to way too many things. You know why? And you know this. You probably started as a freelancer. You remember the times when nothing was being offered. And when stuff, suddenly you're like, they just want me to show, oh my God, like, how do you say no to that? And so it takes you, it takes you a few years. I still haven't mastered it. When you have to say, yeah, that's not for me. I'm not doing it. Yeah. I just said no to a pretty big offer that would have been good. I'm not saying that this project is bad, but I realized, I would not be right for this. And it would be me expending a lot of creative energy and a lot of creative capital to something that I can only give even my best work within this context would end up being mediocre. So why punish everybody with it? So I turned it down, and it felt very good, Yeah.
I mean, well, it's great to be able to get to that point where you can turn things down and feel okay about it.
Oh, well, I never feel good about turning things down. Trust me, I'm still rationalizing it. I'm all about you take whatever work they give you, but there does have to come a point where you got to think of both your health and then the health of whatever the creative endeavor is that has asked you to be a part of it.
In terms of people trying to create art or comedy out of their pain or, really leaning into that. Were there cautionary tales when you were coming up that you kind of saw people that you said, I don't want to be like that, or I'm going to get on Prozac because I don't want to end up like this person who I see kind of going off the rails.
I saw a lot of genuinely brilliant people who got their comedy and art from their angst and from their depression and from their, mental unrest, and then they began to lean on that as a crutch. In other words, everything I do has got to come from a base of stress and anxiety, and they would go out of their way to create that stress and anxiety and personal train wreck with this at first this false confidence that, and then amazing art will spring from this. I just got to burn everything down right now, and I saw some of them mature out of that, and I saw some of them that just did not, and then they realized after a while, oh, the train wreck always wins over the art. It always wins over the art. You gotta go fix yourself. Anyone who thinks that your art will be bigger than all of the things that you're not fixing about yourself, it can be in the short run, and it never is in the long run. And life is long, man. It's just long. We're
living through very stressful, anxious times, as we were just talking about a little bit earlier. I was really struck by this video that you posted from the airport right after the Jimmy Kimmel suspension, where it just felt like, to me, like you just had some sort of urgency that you felt compelled to say something right away. Can you talk about what you were thinking in that moment, why you wanted to say what you did, and sort of where your head was at and is now?
Well, that was one of those moments when what was being done was so blatant and so petty, and it was just such an absolute misuse of power. And so I wanted to get something out there. Not that I have any kind of massive platform or sway on culture, but I could already fast forward to the way that the pro-Trump people were going to start trying to rationalize this and make it, because there's now a very kind of scary legion of people out there whose job is to make the abnormal seem normal and reasonable. And I've always warned against, it's the people who learn the proper, calm language that are the ones that the shitty people will try to bring to their side because they need to be their mouthpieces. And so I wanted to get a blurt out there. I just wanted to blurt that very inarticulate. It's a very inarticulate video, but it is from the heart, which is that this administration is doing something that is so aggressively anti-American. And all of you people that keep saying, Trump is bringing America back. Trump, well, whatever he's bringing back, it's not America. He's birthing something really, really evil. I hate to use the word evil because it sounds so absolute, but there's always been this, I think from the beginning of time, I don't think of it in biblical terms or supernatural terms, but there's this overall mediocrity that wants a foothold in life, and it hates excellence, and it hates people that actually craft their job and care about their job. They just want loud, sloppy spectacle, and it's always going to, it'll ebb and flow, and it'll flare up, and then it'll die down. And right now we were looking at a massive flare up, and we gotta be better about calling that stuff out when it's happening. It's very tempting because it's a very, very easy way to live. There's a big, loud, frightening guy, and if you're just nice to him and do what he says, he'll make your life comfortable. Now, luckily for us in this case, Trump doesn't even know how to make his worshipers' lives comfortable. So I don't know how much longer, he has in terms of whatever effect we're living under right now. This does feel like this is a bad virus, a bad flu, some kind of, bacterial infection that we just got to ride out. But, eventually it'll kill the host or get close to killing the host. And then you gotta, but that was one of those big signs of like, hey, we're bleeding out of our eyeballs. We should get to a hospital right now. Something's wrong. So that was kind of the feeling that I was trying to put across. Other people were also putting out videos and talking about how they felt because it was just so friggin' blatant what was going on, and he hasn't gotten, he was something about, I think he said something about, there was some show he did, like Seth Meyers, like all his jokes about me are negative and that should be illegal. Like, right. So it's just a guy who is trying to make, I want my version of the world to be everybody's version. I can't, again, if you want to live in mediocrity and just enjoy spectacles and circuses and just be loud, you absolutely have the right to do that. But you don't have the right to go, but everyone else has to live at that level too. You can't look at someone else making great music or great movies or great art and go, that shouldn't be allowed because it makes me feel bad about the crap that I like. Like, just enjoy the crap that you like and be confident in it, and don't try to drag everything else down, so that then you can go, see, we're all just sellouts. We all suck. Come on. Like, that's the first thing that the mediocre want to do, is make, if they can make everything else seem like it's compromised and mediocre, they can go, I'm not doing anything that no one else isn't doing. We're all the same. Come on, man. Because they know deep down how shitty it is, how they've chosen to live. The only way to soothe that is to drag everyone else down to that level.
Hey guys, I'm excited to tell you about Inside Trump's Head, a new podcast from The Daily Beast, hosted by Trump biographer Michael Wolff and the Beast's resident provocateur, Joanna Coles. 3 times a week, Michael and Joanna unpack what's really going on inside the mind of the world's most unpredictable man, Donald Trump, bringing you unflinching access and insight you won't find anywhere else. If you've ever wondered what the hell is Trump thinking, and who hasn't, you don't want to miss these conversations. Subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on YouTube, and the next day on your favorite podcast platforms. Yeah, I've been really fascinated by, in terms of comedy and political comedy, who the Trump administration has targeted and who they're kind of stepped back and let get away with it. And, thinking a lot about Paramount, which has Colbert on the one hand, which got canceled, and South Park on the other, which got another $1.5 billion to make more episodes, even though they are arguably going against Trump harder than anyone else. And he hasn't said a word about that. How do you explain that or think about that, where something that is the lesson about going even further than?
No, I mean, I think the lesson is even starker, which is nothing shuts Trump up like money. He can argue that Stephen Colbert isn't getting the ratings and isn't making the money, even though the show is brilliant. He can go, but that it's not that Stephen Colbert is slipping in the ratings. It's that the whole infrastructure of late night television.
He's number one in a system that has come down a lot.
Yeah. South Park, not only does it make insane amounts of money, it gets insane ratings, and Trump can only be so angry at that, because what Trump ultimately will respect, even if it doesn't respect him, is something where the numbers are through the roof and the money is through the roof. And that's the one thing he quails at. So again, with him, he can't look at South Park and see how brilliant it is. And he can't look at something like John Oliver and see how equally brilliant it is. All he can think of in terms of, look at this guy's numbers, look at their numbers. And that's the only way he sees the world. So something that is massive and as undeniable as South Park, both in quality, which people like you and I can see, but then in numbers and money, which Trump can see, he just falls silent. He doesn't know what to say about that. If Colbert was making South Park money and getting South Park eyes on him, Trump wouldn't know what to do. He could be like, and it was very interesting how when South Park came out and it was so brutal and so hilarious about Trump didn't say anything about it. He sent out all of his lieutenants and toadies to then start trying to pick it apart, because ultimately he wants them on his side. He wants every A-lister to perform for him and hang out with him. So the only, the people that he gets angry at are the people that won't kiss his ass and help fill his coffers. So I'm taking a very roundabout way to go, he only sees the world in terms of money and numbers, and that's it. So South Park is confounding for him, because they hate me, but look at the numbers. There's nothing I can say.
Do you think that satire like South Park or like the late night shows is effective in changing people's perception of the Trump administration or the people in power?
That's hard to say, only because the only effective satire right now is satire that is as insane as the time we are living in.
That's the challenge.
But we are living in such hallucinatory times that in order to capture it, you need to create something that feels hallucinatory, and thus it doesn't quite land on you the way it should, because it is so crazy. You can almost discount it a little bit. Now, obviously, there are people, I think, that have seen South Park or listened to John Oliver or Colbert that maybe were like, oh, I didn't really think of it in those terms. But you also have to remember, when people say that Trump followers and MAGA people are lost, they are not lost. This is the only time in their lives they've ever felt found and seen and understood. And people will hang on to that until the bitter end. They will never, ever let go of that. Even if you show them on a chart how this guy is robbing you, they're like, he was nice to me and no one's ever been nice to me. No one's ever accepted my horribleness. I've found people that are like me and I've never had this. And I'm never letting this go. And they'll die with him if they have to. There's a certain portion that you have to just, that's why it drives me, the Democrats drive me up a wall, this whole reaching across. Yes, you should try to reach across and work with them, but also you need to acknowledge there are some people on both sides, I think way more on their side, that are just permanently unreachable. And that, by the way, that is another thing that makes this country great, that you can have a chunk of people that are unreachable and the country still functions.
Yeah. It does seem from the outside of the comedy world that there is a big divide over politics, especially since this last election, the 2024 election. Is that something that you feel, or is that a manufactured thing that is not as real as it seems?
I think it's partially, I think a lot of people that are outside of comedy don't look at comedy and understand the way that comedians actually relate to one another. There's, comedians, one of the things that makes comedians good is hanging out with people that call you on your shit and, bust your balls and point out stupid shit you're doing. I've done a lot of lame stuff as a comedian, a lot of stuff that hasn't aged well, a lot of stuff that was ill-advised. That's part of being an artist. And you have people around you that go, that was stupid. And you go, yeah, you know what? Fuck, that was. But there seems to be a certain section of comedians right now that they do not want to be called out or anything, or can't roll with the, oh yeah, I fucked up. I didn't realize, like, now I know better. There's this weird culture now of no apologies ever. No, like, I've never understood that way of living. If you don't get to your life, if you get to the end of your life and you go, I got no regrets, then you did something wrong. You fuck up. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. But there's a lot of mediocrities that saw that there's a shortcut to success if you just appeal to this group that will, and they only expect you to say 5 or 6 different things. And if you can say those 5 or 6 different variations of a joke to them, they'll fill arenas for you. So that's very tempting. I mean, look, when I was a young comedian trying to break through, that would have been very, very tempting to me. And a lot of these guys are actually very talented performers and could, develop into genuinely amazing comedians. And I think some of them will come out on the other side of this and go, oh, now I know better, and they'll grow from it. I think other people won't. Every new movement in comedy creates people that see it as easy blueprint. That's all I got to do when I'm successful. The same thing happened with alt comedy. There was a hack alt comedy playbook, and there were a lot of alt comedy hothouse flowers that would thrive in these alt comedy rooms that were very, very popular for a year or so. And then when it came time to actually get out on the road in front of an audience that you've got to win over every single night, some of them couldn't do it, and some of them survive. And I think the same thing is going to happen with a lot of these kind of flirting with the alt-right, flirting with fascism comedians that you see out there. Some of them will grow and break through it and go, there will be one of them. I don't know who it'll be, but one of them will do an amazing show, either a one-person show or a Netflix special, where they will really actually embrace, here is how bad it got for me. Here is what I truly believe. Here were the rewards I was getting. And then here's how I came out the other side of that. That's going to be an insane, very human recovery story that one of these presently alt-right grifter comedians is going to tell, and it will actually, I think, open up a lot of people's eyes in the next generation. I don't know who it's going to be, but I have high hopes for a handful of people.
I was going to say, who are you thinking of that you think might do something like that?
Again, I don't want to. Well, here's two. I don't want to name names because I don't want to jinx it. There's people on the other side of the political spectrum of mine that. No, I don't agree with their views, but I can see objectively that some of them are good comedians. Yeah. There's always a big, loud, mediocre, soft center of comedy that will end up being forgettable and will not last. And you see the ones, it's the Italo Calvino thing. The world is inferno. Your job, you got to spot the parts that aren't inferno and try to save them. So I think there's a couple of people that will come out the other side of that and really, really surprise us. I'm not someone who's rooting for people I want people to grow and be amazing and do creative stuff, especially in my field. I don't like where a lot of comedy is right now in terms of who has control over it and who has the bullhorn. But I've also seen that bullhorn pass from a lot of different hands, and I know that it never stays anywhere forever. So I'm just sitting back and doing my comedy and doing my shows for the people that like me, and I'm going to wait to see where the bullhorn ends up next. Right now, no, the bullhorn is not in a good place as far as stand-up is concerned. But I see so many amazing comedians that aren't getting all the attention right now because they're not doing their fucking evil outrage bullshit, that are actually doing brilliant comedy and are going to grow and be amazing and really guide us to where comedy's got to go if it's going to survive.
I think of Bill Burr as someone who has had a really interesting political evolution, which to me has made it so disappointing, the way he really leaned into defending his appearance at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. First of all, I was curious if you got the invite to go over there for that, and just what you made of the reactions to it, who did it. I mean, this is a really stark example of this divide that I was alluding to, I think.
Yeah, look, I didn't get the invite, and like Mark Maron so eloquently said, it's very easy to judge when you have not gotten the invite. And without tooting my own horn, I've been offered similar things. I was offered a non-ID VO campaign for basically a defense contractor. This was about 10 years ago. And I was like, yeah, that's really, and it was amazing money, but I just was like, this is going to blow, like, blast chunks out of my soul if I take it. Like, I know in the long run, and
the people who know you best would have known it was you.
Exactly. And it's just like, I don't want that on my head. And there's been some other speaking engagements recently that I can say that there seems to be a lot of whitewashing attempts going on with evil regimes, both overseas and here. And I know a lot of big and smaller comedians that turned down Riyadh for the same reason. They're just like, how in the fuck can you say yes to this? This is the easiest choice you could possibly make. But yeah, I really stand with people like Mark Maron and David Cross and Atsuko, people like that really, they said it so eloquently. Like, there's just certain things that it shouldn't even be a mortal wrestling match. It should be pretty easy, So that whole incident was so ugly because there was like, as people that I love that went over there, man, and what's the line from Rules of the Game? Renoir's Rules of the Game. The worst thing about life is that everyone has their reasons, and it's the worst thing. Everyone has their reasons, man.
Yeah. I think the thing that was tough was that it was so clear that the reason for most of these people or all these people was money, because we knew that they were getting offered these huge sums. And then they came back and said, actually, it was this great thing. And it was, bridging the divide between cultures and all this bullshit that didn't really pass the smell test.
I I just get so sad when I think about that. Can we not talk about it? I know exactly what you're talking about when I saw, just like, I think I speak for a lot of people when I'm just like, you wanted the money, just take the money and shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Just take the money and try to do something good with it. Go do something good with it. Just, oh, fuck.
Yeah. And move on.
So depressing. Fuck.
Let's talk about something less depressing.
I'm sure there were artists in the 80s that had to watch people that they respected go play Sun City. So what the fuck are you going to do? You know, just make your stand and then got to let them go. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. You know, I'll always say hi to them when I see them. I love them. I don't want them to. God, this is a bummer. Anyway, yeah, that was a bummer.
Yeah, that was tough. You know, I was reading interviews with you leading up to this and just sort of thinking about your career and realizing that you're approaching, I believe, 40 years of stand-up comedy because you started so young.
Oh, yeah. In 2028, I'll have hit 40 years.
Yeah, you got a few years, I guess. But
I got a few years, yeah.
What do you feel like keeps you dedicated to stand-up comedy as an art form after so many years?
It's so much. I never don't have fun doing it. Even the nights when the set isn't great or the travel is exhausting, something happens up there. I don't know what it is, and I'll never not be enchanted by it, and I'll never not be delighted by the way things can turn on stage. It's the way that people that just keep writing or the people that keep acting, even if they're doing like small local theaters, for some people, and I think I'm one of them, something happens up on that stage in that moment, and it's only going to happen at that moment in front of those people. But you are getting access to something that is really special and really rare that a lot of people don't get access to. So the fact that you get that at the end of your day makes the rest of your life just gravy. And if you're not going to, if maybe I'm not some of these gigs, if you're not going to be making the most money, you're still making more than enough money to live on. Just downscale your overhead and live and revel in the fact that you get to do this art form. Just revel in that fact. And I just think a lot of people do art. They pursue art for the objects they can purchase to impress people with. It's like what George Carlin said, I'm not in this so I can buy a house to scare people with. Like, you live small, live simply, and get to experience the art and have access to that every single night. Most people never have that. So, I just always keep that in mind, and I just never forget how lucky I am. You're
out there on tour now, I guess, working on your next hour. It's called the Effervescent Tour. Is there a theme to that? How did you arrive at effervescent as a adjective?
I had taken a bunch of new pictures for the tour poster, and then I sent the picture out to a bunch of comedian friends of mine, like, hey, think of because I couldn't think of a tour title. I'd never thought of a tour title before. And this friend of mine, Tammy Golden, was like, oh, effervescent, like that word matched with my face because I look so dour. I just love that. So it means nothing. It's just this ironic, like, oh, look at this bridge troll. He's going to come out and bring you some laughs.
Oh, I thought maybe you were turning into some sort of like, optimist, very bubbly comedian.
Maybe it's like this defiant, like, how you would like, hey, how do you feel in 2025? Effervescent.
So now it's time for our segment called The First Laugh. So you've done this before, so I'm going to try to ask some different questions to you. But starting with, is there something that you would tell yourself when you were first starting out that you wish you had known about comedy, about what it is to be a stand-up comedian, just some piece of advice that you would give yourself if you could?
Slow down and hang out more with comedians rather than hustle. Like have more kind of wasted days where you just sit and talk with your friends and do nothing in particular. That will make you a much richer soul as you get older and as you keep doing comedy. That will pay off in dividends that you can't even imagine right now. Slow the fuck down and don't hustle as hard as you think you need to hustle. Become the kind of person that people root to have win, which a lot of times when you're hustling too hard, people are like, well, then fuck this guy. He's annoying. And I know that there were times when I was just really annoying. And, it took me a while to go, wait a minute, just you get to do comedy. Why don't you just remember that and slow down? So that'd be my big thing.
In those early days when you were starting out, was there a moment where you felt like you were going to make it as a comedian, that you could give up your day job, or that you really felt like, I think this is going to work for me?
There was never a specific moment, but I do remember there was a year, I think I made 11 grand one year doing comedy. So I only had to do comedy to make money. I barely was able to pay all my rent. I barely was able to afford my food, but that felt like such a win that, oh my God, I'm actually only working as a comedian. It's the first year that I've only worked as a comedian. And so that was the first time that it felt like, oh yeah, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. This is going to be okay. That was the first year, 1993.
We learn in your new special that QAnon considers you A-list, which is very cool.
Cling on to that. Thank you, QAnon.
That's for anyone who hasn't heard it yet. You're in you come up in a documentary about QAnon where you're listing, all these Oprah and Tom Hanks, and you're in that club. But I was curious about the first time that you felt famous, or that you got recognized, or you sort of realized that you were a recognizable person out in the world.
There's, there's never a specific moment where the music swells and you go, I've arrived. It just happens slowly but surely. I think one time I was, I think I was calling to reserve a hotel room somewhere where I was going to perform, and I was calling like, yeah. And then they go, so I go to first name Patton, last name Oswalt. And then the hotel person was like, you're the comedian? Oh man. And they recited some of my bits to me, and that felt like, oh Jesus. That kind of felt like maybe that was, now it's out there. Felt good.
The last time you were here, we talked about your first TV credit, which was on Seinfeld, which is very cool. Yeah. I was curious about your first TV writing job, which I believe was on Mad TV, which we did not talk about. Is there a memory or story that sort of pops to mind when you think about your time on Mad TV?
I just remember getting to work with so many amazing writers on that show. People like Blaine Capatch and Mike Short and Brian Hart, and just like these really interesting minds, and especially seeing them so creative. And then because it was a really cool object lesson, because a lot of my friends were writing on Mr. Show at the time, and Mr. Show was like absolute freedom, like really do the weirdest stuff you can think of. And Mad TV, there were a lot of network restrictions on that show, and watching these very creative, really funny people try to find ways around the blocks that network and what a network's expectation of a show is, to push that through was really instructive. Like I remember just if we rephrase this, then we can get away with that. Just little things like that. I can't think of anything specific, but I did I got a crash course in, okay, here's how you get your stuff through.
I did see that you appeared on screen, or you're credited as a Crip in wheelchair. Do you remember that?
That was a sketch I wrote where the Crip street gang is trying to announce that they are trying to become diverse, and they're trying to let people who are differentially abled, and and it's this big, and I'm just a guy sitting in a wheelchair with a gun, just so happy to be part of the Crips.
Your first two roles in big movies came in 1999 in two very good films, Man on the Moon and Magnolia.
Yeah.
So do you have memories from either of those that you? Because that was a big deal to get into movies like that at that time.
Well, the big memory from Man on the Moon was I only have one line, which is, "Hey, aren't you Andy Kaufman?" Because he's working at Jerry's, and I'm sitting there like a construction worker, and I was so nervous that when they went and action, and I said, "Hey, aren't you Jim Carrey?" And then my face was like, "Fuck." And Milos Forman, who was directing, just started laughing so hard. And he goes, one more time, and say the character. Like he realized how nervous I was. Now.
Yeah.
And then Magnolia, I just remember because I didn't, you don't get to read the whole script. And so I'm just like, first I'm in this casino getting beaten up, and then I'm hanging from this tree in a wetsuit. And I was like, why am I up in this wetsuit? And he goes, and all Paul Thomas Anderson said was, you're the first frog that falls out of the sky. And he goes, and that will make sense to you when you go to the premiere. I went, okay. So.
Yeah, that's trust right there.
That's trust, baby.
Do you have a quick review of One Battle After Another? Have you seen it?
Fucking fantastic. And I'm very spoiled. I got to see it at the Vista in VistaVision.
Oh.
I had the best seats. That movie is so friggin' amazing. That's a movie that I'm going to seen it twice now. And I feel like that's one of those movies that every 3 or 4 months I will go revisit it. It's just so perfect. And it keeps topping itself in absurdity, but when it adds a new level of absurdity, it becomes weirdly even more human and touching. I've rarely seen a movie that can shift gears so effortlessly between like almost wacky comedy to real human tragedy to kind of horror to action. The last movie I saw that did that was Aaron Shinberg's A Different Man, which just shifted so perfectly between comedy and then kind of like heartfelt tragedy and then genuine like horror movie. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. What do you remember about the first time you performed stand-up on late night TV? I want to say it was on Conan.
It was on Conan.
Yeah.
It was on Conan. That was one of those things where I got there. I don't think I slept the whole time. I didn't panel. I just went out and did stand up. And so all I did was just go over my set and walk around the city. And I don't think I ate. I was so nervous. And I'm sorry to say, I really don't remember a lot about it because I was really nervous. I was also a huge fan of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And it was one of those shows where I'm like, I want to do well on this show more than any other show. I want my comedy to fit in here. Like it really mattered to me that I do well there. So that was like one of the most nervous I ever was before going and doing a stand-up set.
We kind of touched on this before when we were talking about saying no, but a question that I ask my guests is there something that you said no to that you now kind of think, oh, maybe I should have said yes to that at the time?
The only thing that comes close, and I still don't feel bad about it, was I was basically offered the lead role in the first season of Fargo, the role that, oh God, the guy from The Office, what's his name? So brilliant.
Oh, Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman. He did. He was fucking brilliant. So, but I was offered that role, but my daughter had just been born and it would have been me up in Calgary, I believe, for like 7 or 8 months. And I just was like, I don't want to miss these first months and they were like, your wife and daughter can come with you. I'm like, I'm not going to bring them to a hotel room in Calgary.
Yeah.
And have that
frozen tundra
memory. Yeah. So I turned it down and I've since become really good friends with Noah Hawley. I think that's one of the most consistently brilliant shows on TV, but I could have been, and also it's hard for me to regret it because Martin Freeman was so brilliant. What if I had been in that show and sucked and stopped that show from getting all the seasons that it got? So it's a weird thing of like, yes, I would have loved to have been able to do that work, but the first 9 months with my daughter was just best. I'm missing out on that? Yeah.
The flip side of that question is there anything you said yes to in your career that you now think, I probably should have said no to that?
No, you know what? That's again, maybe I'm lucky that I had this attitude. I'm in this business for the money and the anecdotes. So if I make some money on something, great. And if it's good, great. But if it goes bad, but I get a great story out of it, I'm just as happy. So, I want one of those showbiz lives when I've got like, yeah, I did this thing and it was a triumph, and then I did this that you want to hear about, a disaster. Like that's what I want. So I've had my fair share of both, and it's been very, very wonderful.
Well, that kind of speaks to the last question that we ask, which is there a story or memory from your career that makes you laugh now, but really was not funny when it happened?
Oh, boy.
One of those anecdotes, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I remember... God, this is... Very, very, very early on in my career, I did a gig in Staunton, Virginia, like up at this mountain resort. This is way early, and I was given the wrong time. So I got there late, and the headliner had gone on without me. And so I wasn't going to get paid, but I go, please, please, please let me go on so I can get, because I was all about, like, I want people to know that I'm a professional. Like, you don't need to pay me for this first show, but let me go on after the headliner, do my 15 minutes. And they went, fine, kid, great. And I went up, and it was this huge ballroom that I think sat like 600 people. And there were 80 people in it, just in this little bunch at the front. The headliner is finishing. He is just eating it. These people are not laughing. I go up. I eat it even harder. We then both go to the bar, and we're sitting there, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. The guy told me 9 o'clock, and then the second show would be at 11. He goes, it's okay. They mess up tomorrow. We'll do the second show. We go out to do the second show. It's the same 80 people. It was just sit here all night and we'll just do shows. So we had to go out in front of them, and I ate it even harder. And it was like, as I went on stage, the crowd was like, oh, and it was one of these rooms that was booked by a guy that booked a lot of rooms. And I was like panicking, going, oh my God, he's going to hear how terrible I did and he'll never book me and and then I'm just like, I look back on it now and goes, I was fighting to get a foothold in a circuit of god-awful one-nighters through southwestern Virginia. Why did I care? But it was, at the time, it was like everything was feast or famine when you're starting.
Well, Patton, thank you so much for doing this. I think this was our best episode yet. We really, it was great. So
nice, man. Thank you.
Black Coffee and Ice Water premieres exclusively on Audible this Thursday, November 20th, and we'll put a link to it in the description for this episode as well. Patton Oswalt, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it, man.